The series begins with a volleyball player named Kong Sarah. She's known as the volleyball goddess. One day, while at an amusement park, Sarah is on a thrilling ride and remembers her childhood with her dad. After the ride, she buys a mask to avoid being recognized and heads to a basketball game, hoping to win a teddy bear that looks like the one her dad gave her. However, she loses, and the winner is a guy named Woong. Sarah really wants the teddy bear, so she asks Woong if he could give it to her. Woong tells her to take off her mask if she wants his help. Without thinking much, Sarah takes off the mask, and Woong is surprised by how pretty she is, but he still refuses to give her the bear. Sarah chases after him, trying to grab the teddy bear, and they end up near a fountain that sprays water all over them, soaking them both. Sarah gets even more upset and ends up swapping phones with Woong to get money for new clothes and to go home. On her way home, a taxi driver recognizes her as the volleyball goddess. Meanwhile, Woong meets coach son Byung-ju and his daughter's son Soo-bin outside a convenience store. When Soo-bin sees Woong holding the teddy bear, she thinks he brought it for her. Feeling bad, Woong gives the bear to Soo-bin, even though he had planned to give it to his sick little sister. Byung-ju then asks Woong when he'll return to volleyball practice, and Woong promises to come back after his sister's surgery is done. At her office, Sarah overhears her manager, Kim Ki-jun, getting mad at his secretary, Kim Mi-jin, for letting Sarah leave without anyone watching over her. Feeling tired of always being recognized, Sarah decides to go to a karaoke place to relax. But once again, someone recognizes her there. She quickly runs away and accidentally enters the men's restroom. Inside, a teenager named Baek Woo-jin, who is a huge fan of Sarah, notices her. And Woo-jin, excited to see his idol, knocks on the bathroom stall and tells Sarah how much he admires her. But Sarah, frustrated by being recognized yet again, tries to escape. Unfortunately, her clothes get stuck in the door, and Sarah mistakenly thinks Woo-jin is trying to stop her, so she hits him. Because of the misunderstanding, both Sarah and Woo-jin are taken to the police station. Even though Woo-jin was the one who got hurt, he chooses not to press charges against Sarah. Instead, he asks Sarah to be the volleyball coach for his school team. To avoid the incident from becoming public news, Sarah, her manager, and Woo-jin hold a press conference. There, they announce that Sarah will be the new volleyball coach at Woo-jin's school. When Sarah finds out that Woo-jin's school volleyball team is in last place and they lost their last game 25-0, she feels unmotivated to coach the team. Even so, Ki-jun reminds her that she was kicked out of the professional volleyball team because she caused her team to lose a match. The next day, Sarah, along with Ki-jun, visits Daehan High School, which is Woo-jin's school. Soon after, reporters gather around to take pictures of Sarah, who will now be coaching the high school volleyball team. At the training ground, Sarah gets frustrated with the team members because they are undisciplined and disrespectful. This makes her even more reluctant to coach the team. She asks Ki-jun to stop the media from spreading news about her hitting Woo-jin. Ki-jun tells her that he can't do that and insists that Sarah should stay as the coach to protect her public image. Shortly after, Byung-ju arrives with Woong. At that time, Sarah doesn't recognize him until Byung-ju introduces Woong as a senior player on the volleyball team. When Sarah hears his name, she remembers that Woong is the same guy she met at the amusement park. Woong also didn't expect to meet Sarah again. That night, Byung-ju invited Sarah to eat and have drinks at a food stall. While there, he told her about the Daehan High School volleyball team, which had even participated in the President's Cup but ended up in last place. Sarah was surprised to hear how weak the team she was supposed to coach was. Byung-ju also mentioned that the best player on the team was Woong. When Woong arrived, Sarah didn't believe he was the best player and started complaining. Feeling annoyed, he decided to leave. And Sarah, thinking Woong was being rude, drank until she was drunk and bothered him, who had no choice but to make sure Sarah got home safely. The next morning, Sarah went to the school to teach the students volleyball. During the lesson, she remembered that Woong had been aggressive toward her before, so she planned to check her house's CCTV after practice. When practice started, Sarah became frustrated because Woong wasn't listening to her. So, she challenged him to a 3-on-3 volleyball match. If Woong won, he would become the team captain, and Sarah would quit being the coach, just as she wanted. During the team selection, Woong also asked Sarah to be on his team. Meanwhile, the school principal was told by a school commissioner named Lee, who happened to be Woong's father, to disband the volleyball team. Turns out, Lee didn't like that Woong was spending too much time playing volleyball instead of focusing on his studies. During the volleyball match, Woong won the first round, but Woong kept cheering for Sarah, reminding her that her reputation was on the line. Hearing this, Sarah regained her confidence and helped her team win the next 2 rounds. After the match, Woong noticed that Sarah was in pain every time she landed after a smash. He helped her tie her shoelaces and suggested she get her foot checked at the hospital. There, Sarah was surprised by his concern. Later, Woong gave Sarah a strict training schedule for the team, and she was shocked by how intense their training was. Sarah then went to her agency office to talk to Ki-jun about her experience playing against the Daehan high school team. There, Ki-jun warned her not to get too involved in the coaching job, reminding her it was only temporary. Sarah quickly replied, saying she wouldn't get too attached to the job. When Sarah got home, she checked the CCTV footage to see what happened while she was drunk. She was shocked to find out that she was the one who attacked Woong first. At that time, Sarah felt really embarrassed because she had thought that Woong had attacked her on purpose. At Woong's house, his junior, Won Ryong, was looking for bandages in Woong's room when he accidentally found Sarah's phone, the one they had exchanged at the amusement park. When Won Ryong saw that the phone wallpaper had Sarah's face, he misunderstood and thought Woong liked her. At that time, Won Ryong promised to keep it a secret. When Woong entered the room, Won Ryong suddenly promised not to tell anyone Woong's secret, which confused Woong. But in the end, he didn't really care about it. The next day, Sarah returned to Daehan High School to check on the volleyball team's practice. She felt annoyed by how packed their training schedule was and thought about changing it, but she reminded herself that it wasn't her responsibility to fix the team's practice routine. Since she was only a temporary coach, Sarah decided to sit on the sidelines and watch the players practice. Then Woong encouraged his teammates, saying that Sarah had her own way of coaching. After a while, Sarah told everyone to stop practicing, saying that volleyball should be played indoors, not outdoors, as it would improve their training. One day, Sarah secretly makes a new lineup for the Daehan High School volleyball team. She doesn't realize that Woong sees the lineup and tells her that he supports her idea. Feeling happy with Woong's support, Sarah announces the new lineup at the next practice. While Woong is telling the team about the changes, Sarah approaches Woong to apologize for her behavior when she was drunk. However, some players are not happy with the new lineup, especially Jung Il-young, who suddenly hits a smash ball towards Sarah. There, Woong quickly steps in to protect her, and a fight breaks out between him and Il-young. Just then, the principal, Ki-jun, and Mi-jin arrive, and they see Woong hit Il-young. The principal gets angry, and Sarah's manager pulls her out of the situation. At that moment, Ki-jun warns Sarah not to cause any more problems, even though she wants to go back and clear up any misunderstandings between the school and the volleyball team. But Ki-jun stops her, reminding her that she is only supposed to coach for a week, and asks Mi-jin to take Sarah home. Soon after, Sarah waits for Ki-jun at the agency, and when she hears that the volleyball team might be disbanded, she panics and decides to meet the principal to fix the situation. At that time, Ki-jun tries to stop her again, but Sarah still goes. The next day, Sarah looks for the volleyball team members and only finds Woong and a few friends practicing outside. Woong tells her that the team is being evaluated, so some players are practicing in different places. Sarah then finds Woong practicing alone in the building. She apologizes for her mistakes, but Woong, still upset, asks why she was so determined to win the match, even though she didn't care about the team before. There, Sarah explains that she changed her mind after seeing how passionate Woong was about helping the team improve. Later, Sarah goes to the agency because Ki-jun asks her to return to filming commercials and TV shows. However, Sarah refuses, saying she wants to focus on coaching the volleyball team at Daehan High School. Upon hearing that, Ki-jun gets angry, feeling that Sarah is no longer prioritizing her career as a professional volleyball player. They argue, and Sarah decides to leave the agency. She even moves out of the house provided by the agency and chooses to live with the volleyball team members in a house given by the school. While staying with the volleyball team, Sarah starts to understand the players' lives and their struggles to keep the team going, especially since it's close to being disbanded. From talking to Won-ryong and Jin-ha, Sarah learns that Woo-jin is the son of Lee, and Woo-jin has fought hard to keep the volleyball team alive. She also finds out that Jae-woong took a year off due to breathing problems. Because of this, Sarah becomes determined to help the team win the President's Cup, even though it's a huge challenge for a team that's currently in last place. One night, Sarah sees Jae-woong practicing alone outside and warns him that the night air isn't good for his breathing. At that time, Jae-woong ignores her and says that she shouldn't be coaching if she's not fully committed. Annoyed, she decides to prove that she can be more than just an athlete, and she can be a coach who leads the team to victory. The next morning during practice, Woo-jin sees Sarah getting hot from the sun and takes the initiative to hold an umbrella for her. There, Sarah explains her analysis of the players to Woo-jin, but instead of paying attention, Woo-jin gets distracted by her beauty. Later that night, Soo-bin and Byung-ju bring food for the whole team. Byung-ju then tells Sarah about the upcoming President's Cup, which is less than a month away. Now, Sarah officially commits to being Daehan High School's volleyball coach. One day, Sarah and Byung-ju meet with the principal to ask if the volleyball team can be taken off probation so they can train for the President's Cup instead of helping. The principal says that the Daehan High School volleyball team will be disbanded soon. After the meeting, Byung-ju loses hope and tells Sarah that there's nothing they can do to stop the school's decision. But Sarah refuses to give up and still wants to fight for the team. At home, Woo-jin is about to go to volleyball practice when Lee stops him. Lee thinks practicing is pointless because the volleyball team is going to be disbanded anyway. Shocked by this news, Woo-jin hurries to the team house to ask Sarah if it's true. When they talk, Sarah asks Woo-jin to keep his voice down so the other players won't hear the bad news. However, Han-sol, who is eating nearby, overhears their conversation. Then, Sarah finally has to explain to all the team members that the school is planning to disband the volleyball team. Meanwhile, Jae-woong returned home after visiting his younger sister, only to hear from his teammates about the volleyball team being disbanded. At first, he was in a good mood, but then he got angry when he realized that some of his teammates were more focused on themselves rather than worrying about the team. Feeling disappointed, Jae-woong stormed out of the house. At that moment, Sarah tried to follow him, but lost track of him. When Sarah returned, Soo-bin told her about Jae-woong's family problems. Jae-woong's family was struggling financially because they had to pay for his younger sister's medical treatments, and they even had to sell their house to cover the hospital bills. After hearing this, Sarah went to the hospital where Jae-woong's sister was being treated, hoping to find him. When she arrived, she saw the doll that she almost took from Jae-woong before. She also met Jae-woong's mother, who told her that Jae-woong usually visits once a week. Determined, Sarah waited for Jae-woong at the hospital. After a few days, she finally saw him and tried to convince him to rejoin the volleyball team. Jae-woong was surprised that Sarah wasn't busy training, since she was a professional volleyball player. Sarah then explained that she had to stop playing volleyball because of a leg injury that needed surgery. Hearing this, Jae-woong told Sarah to get her leg checked by a doctor, but Sarah refused because she didn't want anyone to know about her injury. Jae-woong got upset and told her that ignoring her health could ruin her chances of playing volleyball again. But then, Sarah fired back, saying that Jae-woong also threw away his chance by leaving the team. After their talk, Sarah convinced Jae-woong to return to the team and promised to help them win the President's Cup. When they arrived back at the volleyball house, Woo-jin, who had been waiting, felt jealous seeing Sarah and Jae-woong together. Later, Sarah and Woo-jin met with Lee, asking him not to disband the team. Lee challenged Sarah to lead the team to win first place in the President's Cup if she wanted to save them. With determination, Sarah accepted the challenge, surprising Woo-jin. On another day, before practice, Sarah met Ki-jun, who offered her a contract extension. Sarah refused and made it clear that she wanted to focus on being a volleyball coach. Frustrated, Ki-jun talked to Mi-jin, who suggested that they could create a situation that would force Sarah to re-sign the contract. That night, Sarah found Woong doing physical training alone. Once again, Woong urged Sarah to go to the hospital for her injury before it got worse like his. There, Sarah asked what had happened to him, but Woong didn't answer, getting annoyed by her playful attitude. Without them knowing, someone was secretly taking pictures of the two of them. One day, Sarah heard that Woong was in the hospital. Without hesitation, she rushed to see him, but it turned out Woong had tricked her. He just wanted her to go get her leg checked. After the checkup, Sarah was heartbroken because the doctor told her that she wouldn't be able to play volleyball again, even with treatment. To shake off her sadness, she hurried back to the volleyball team to start practice. That night, Sarah met Woong while he was practicing and gave him a drink. She playfully teased him while he drank it. Her playful attitude made Woong feel relieved because it seemed like Sarah was starting to accept that her injury might not fully heal. Even so, Woong still hoped that Sarah would get proper treatment and one day return to the volleyball court. The next day, Sarah told the team that they had to win first place in the President's Cup if they wanted to avoid being disbanded. This shocked the team members who thought it was impossible. To test their abilities, Sarah arranged a practice match with Hyeonchang High School, last year's champions. In the first round, Daehan High lost to Hyeonchang's reserve team. But Sarah, refusing to let her team give up, kept encouraging Woong and the others. Her words inspired the Daehan High team, and they fought hard, eventually winning the match. This gave them new hope for the upcoming President's Cup. After the match, Sarah accidentally spotted Il-young secretly watching the Daehan High School volleyball team. Il-young had quit the team after his fight with Woong. When Sarah called out to him, Il-young, feeling embarrassed, quickly ran away. Later that night, Sarah returned to the school field to join Woong while he was exercising. They sat together on the edge of the field, chatting until Sarah got sleepy and fell asleep on Woong's shoulder. Shortly after, 3 unknown men approached them and assumed they were a couple. At that time, Woong noticed one of the men trying to take a picture of Sarah to create gossip. He told Sarah to leave, but she refused and stayed by his side. Once the men left, Woong took Sarah home and scolded her for not listening to him. Unbeknownst to them, the 3 men had been hired by Mijin to take photos of Sarah and Woong together. The next morning, as Woong and Sarah were about to go for a morning run, they were shocked to find many reporters gathered outside the house. Soon after, Woong stepped outside first and was immediately surrounded by reporters asking for Sarah's response to the dating rumors with a Daehan High School student. The photos that were shared showed Sarah and Woong, but their faces were blurred. And Sarah, unaware of the scandal, was shocked to see the pictures of her and Woong. Soon after, Ki-jun called Sarah and offered to help fix the situation, but only if she signed a new contract with the agency. Upon hearing that Sarah refused, but Woong took her phone and told Ki-jun that he was the man in the photos and that Sarah would sign the contract. Feeling betrayed by Woong's actions, Sarah slapped him in front of the volleyball team, hurt because she felt her efforts to coach the team weren't appreciated. Meanwhile, outside, the reporters who had gathered left after Sarah agreed to Ki-jun's request. At the same time, Woojin met with Ki-jun, claiming to be the person in the photos with Sarah. He asked Ki-jun to send the reporters away and promised he wouldn't see Sarah again. Then, Sarah eventually returned to the agency and signed a new contract. However, during the press conference, she suddenly fainted and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor said she only had anemia, but Ki-jun, worried about her health, decided to have her stay in the hospital for a while. When Sarah was moving to a new hospital room, she took the chance to call Woojin to ask if Woong had practiced volleyball that day. At that time, Woojin lied, saying Woong had practiced well, even though he felt sad and jealous because Sarah seemed to care more about Woong. Then, Woojin remembered his own sacrifice of signing a contract with Ki-jun to protect Sarah from the reporters. If he broke the contract, Ki-jun would make sure Woojin couldn't play volleyball anymore. Meanwhile, Ki-jun received news from the doctor that Sarah's old ankle injury had flared up again because she had recently checked her foot. Worried, Ki-jun rushed to the hospital, but Sarah had already left and gone home. When Sarah arrived at her house, she saw her favorite teddy bear outside. She left it there to see who had placed it. After waiting for a while, she saw Woong come back to take the bear. Shortly after, Sarah invited Woong to sit and talk on her porch. There, Woong admitted he regretted hurting Sarah with his actions. Upon hearing that, Sarah smiled and told him to focus on winning the President's Cup and getting into his dream university. As Sarah was about to go inside, Woong suddenly pulled her and kissed her. After the kiss, Sarah felt confused and started wondering if Woong had feelings for her. She found herself in a dilemma because it didn't seem right for her to have a special relationship with Woong, who was her student and she was his coach. A few days later, Sarah met with Ki-jun, who was upset that she hadn't told the agency about her true health condition. There, Sarah apologized and offered to cancel her new contract, but Ki-jun refused. He told her that even though she couldn't play volleyball anymore, the agency could still help her find another job. The next day, the Daehan High School volleyball team started to worry because Woong hadn't shown up for practice in days and wasn't answering their calls. Even though they were concerned, they decided to continue practicing. Sarah secretly watched the team from a distance, but noticed Woong wasn't there. When she tried calling him, he didn't pick up. At the same time, she saw Il-young watching the practice from afar. When Sarah called out to him, he ran away again. Because of her shout, the volleyball players realized Sarah was there. They asked when she would return to train them and live with them again, but Sarah couldn't give them an answer. Just then, Ki-jun called Sarah, asking her to come to the agency office. When Sarah arrived at Ki-jun's office, Mi-jin explained that the agency had planned a volleyball match where Sarah would pretend to get injured again during the game. The agency wanted to use this to announce her condition to the media, hoping to gain public sympathy and hide the fact that her injury had happened a long time ago. At that moment, Sarah was shocked and hurt by how cruel the agency was, especially since they knew she dreamed of playing volleyball until she was 40. Later that afternoon, Woong was training when he noticed Woong secretly following him. He invited Woong to a ramen shop to talk. During their conversation, Woong asked if Woong was the man in Sarah's scandal photo, but Woong avoided the question. Woong then shared how he had signed a contract with Ki-jun to get rid of the reporters outside the volleyball player's house. Woong was surprised by Woong's sacrifice. When Woong was about to pay, he noticed the ramen shop's CCTV camera facing the road to Daehan High School. He remembered the three men who had approached him and Sarah that night and found them suspicious. Woong believed they were involved in spreading the scandal photos. He and Woong asked the shop owner to show the CCTV footage from the night of the incident. After watching it, they saw the three men meeting Mi-jin at a mini-market, proving that she was behind the photo leak. Without hesitation, Woong and Woong went to tell Sarah what they had discovered. Together, they realized that Mi-jin had acted on Ki-jun's orders to pressure Sarah into re-signing the contract. Woong also revealed Woong's contract with Ki-jun, which left Sarah even more shocked. After their meeting, Woong met with Sarah and offered to confront Ki-jun himself. Sarah told him not to, saying she could handle it on her own. Before leaving, Woong surprised Sarah by kissing her on the cheek, making her blush. The next day, Sarah went to the agency office and showed proof that Mi-jin had ordered three men to follow her. At that time, Mi-jin couldn't deny it and admitted what she had done in front of Ki-jun. Then, Mi-jin explained that Ki-jun wasn't involved in the plan and that she acted alone to get Sarah back to the agency. Shortly after, Ki-jun expressed his disappointment with Mi-jin because he had told her not to act on her own. Frustrated, Mi-jin angrily blamed Sarah for causing the agency many problems. Sarah stayed quiet, realizing she had made some mistakes with the agency. After Mi-jin left, Ki-jun asked Sarah how he could make up for Mi-jin's actions. Sarah made 3 requests which were to be allowed to coach the Daehan High School volleyball team until the President's Cup was over, to cancel the agreement between Ki-jun and Woong, and to cancel her new contract. Upon hearing that, Ki-jun agreed to the first 2 requests but refused to cancel her contract. He urged Sarah to focus on healing her injury and revealed that he had already scheduled her ankle surgery. Then, Ki-jun told Sarah that taking a break for 1 or 2 years to heal wouldn't be a problem, as long as she could eventually return to pursue her dream of playing volleyball again. With the new deal approved by the agency, Ki-jun and Mi-jin escorted Se-ra to Daehan High School so she could coach the volleyball team. Before Se-ra went inside, Ki-jun secretly told Mi-jin to keep an eye on Se-ra's interactions with Woo-jin and Jae-woong. To make this easier, Ki-jun arranged for Mi-jin to live with Se-ra at the volleyball team's house. That night, Se-ra was with Jae-woong while he was doing his physical training. She expressed her suspicions about Mi-jin's true intentions for staying with him. Soon after, Mi-jin appeared and told Se-ra that she had to report wherever she went. Jae-woong felt annoyed and uncomfortable with Mi-jin's presence. Just then, Woo-jin arrived, saying he wanted to train with Jae-woong. Upon hearing that, Jae-woong, who only wanted to be alone with Se-ra, felt even more irritated. However, to avoid making Mi-jin suspicious about his relationship with Se-ra, Jae-woong invited Woo-jin to join him in training. Later, Jae-woong asked Woo-jin why he suddenly wanted to practice together. Woo-jin explained that he just wanted to protect Se-ra from getting into more trouble. He also asked Jae-woong to keep his distance from Se-ra to prevent any more scandals. The next day, while the Daehan High team was practicing, Se-ra noticed Il-young peeking at the practice. She invited him to talk privately. Il-young asked why his position on the team had been changed. Se-ra explained that the changes were made based on the player's skills. After understanding her reasoning, Il-young agreed to rejoin the team. The next day, Woo-jin visited Se-ra in her room to share his concerns about Mi-jin constantly watching over her. Shortly after, Jae-woong came in to tell Se-ra that some students wanted to play volleyball with her during gym class. Se-ra agreed, but during the game, she fell, and Jae-woong quickly took her to the school's health room. While Jae-woong was giving her first aid for her ankle, Se-ra told him she had decided to get the treatment he had been suggesting. Jae-woong was happy to hear the good news. Meanwhile, Mi-jin reported to Ki-jun about how close Se-ra and Jae-woong seemed, almost like a couple, while her relationship with Woo-jin appeared to be just a coach-student bond. After hearing this, Ki-jun suddenly sponsored the Daehan High School volleyball team, giving all the players new uniforms. In front of the entire team, especially Jae-woong, Ki-jun hugged Se-ra, as if showing off his closeness to her. That night, Ki-jun also bought pizza for the whole team, making everyone happy. When Jae-woong stepped outside, Se-ra followed him. As Mi-jin was about to interfere, Byung-ju stopped her, telling her to leave Jae-woong and Se-ra alone. Outside, Jae-woong shared his concerns with Se-ra about Ki-jun, who had sent Mi-jin to keep an eye on her. He worried that Mi-jin might try something harmful, given her past actions. However, Se-ra wasn't suspicious of Mi-jin at all, especially since Mi-jin had apologized and admitted her mistakes. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, Han-sol, who shares a room with Jae-woong, secretly replied to a message from Soo-bin on Jae-woong's phone. Turns out, Soo-bin had liked Jae-woong for a long time and often sent him messages, though Jae-woong never replied. Since Han-sol liked Soo-bin, he used this chance to talk to her, pretending to be Jae-woong. Han-sol even agreed to Soo-bin's request for Jae-woong to meet with the Hyunchong High School volleyball coach. The next morning at school, Han-sol begged Jae-woong to meet the coach because he was afraid of making Soo-bin upset. Jae-woong found it strange and asked why Han-sol was so worried. That's when Han-sol confessed that he had replied to Soo-bin's messages on Jae-woong's phone. Hearing this, Soo-bin got angry with Han-sol. Meanwhile, Jae-woong asked Soo-bin why the Hyunchong High School coach wanted to meet her, but she didn't answer. Curious, Jae-woong decided to meet the coach after school. When Se-ra heard about this from a friend, she began to wonder why Jae-woong was meeting with the coach of the opposing team. In Jae-woong's meeting with the Hyunchong High School coach, the coach invited him to join their team. Jae-woong didn't respond and just stayed quiet. The next day at school, the Daehan High School volleyball team, who had just finished practice, heard from Soo-bin that Jae-woong might transfer to the Hyunchong High School team. This news shocked and upset Se-ra and the rest of the team, as they were about to lose their best player with the President's Cup getting closer. In the middle of all the confusion, Jae-woong suddenly showed up at practice. He was immediately bombarded with questions about the transfer. Annoyed by all the questions, Jae-woong decided to leave. That night, Se-ra went to Jae-woong's usual training spot, but found only Woo-jin practicing alone. Since Jae-woong didn't show up, Woo-jin offered to walk Se-ra home. On the way, Woong admitted that he had seen Woong kiss Sarah. He expressed his frustration, wondering why Sarah didn't scold Woong for being disrespectful, especially since she treated Woong differently from the other team members. Feeling upset with Sarah's behavior, Woong left her standing alone. At home, Sarah teased Woong about transferring to another volleyball team. And Woong, who felt annoyed, told her he had never agreed to join Hyunchang High School's volleyball team. A few days later, still upset with Sarah, Woong skipped practice. While thinking it over, he began to suspect that the offer from the Hyunchang coach might have been arranged by Mijin. Realizing this, Woong went back to practice and reassured Sarah that he had no plans to move to the opposing team. And Sarah, who had been feeling sad, finally smiled happily. When Sarah got home, Mijin approached her to apologize for Woong's transfer offer, which was made by Ki-jun. Shocked and angry, Sarah confronted Ki-jun, asking why he did it. There, Ki-jun explained that he thought Sarah wanted to coach the Daehan High School team because she liked Woong. To stop this, Ki-jun tried to keep Woong away, hoping Sarah would return to being an athlete. He also admitted that he wanted Sarah to stay by his side. On her way home, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Ki-jun's words. Just then, Woong arrived and interrupted her thoughts. After listening to Sarah's story about her meeting with Ki-jun, Woong realized that Ki-jun had feelings for Sarah. He then confessed that he also liked Sarah as more than a coach. Sarah was speechless, and just as Woong was about to kiss her, they were startled by the sound of a fence, leaving Sarah without giving him an answer. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep, feeling confused about Woong's love confession, especially since he was much younger than her. When she asked Mijin for advice, Mijin told her that love doesn't care about age differences. A few days passed and Sarah still hadn't given Woong an answer, which made him frustrated. One evening, Woong saw Sarah after she came back from the hospital for her injury treatment. They walked together, and many people recognized Sarah in the crowd. As they neared home, he asked her again about his feelings. Sarah finally told Woong that she couldn't accept his love and asked him to focus on the upcoming President's Cup match instead. Heartbroken, Woong ran alongside Woong, shouting in frustration. Meanwhile, Woong remembered overhearing Woong's love confession to Sarah. He had purposely made noise at the house gate to stop them from kissing. The next day, Woong met Sarah, who was on her way to the hospital, and asked her to reject Woong's confession because he also liked her. This made Sarah decide to turn down Woong's feelings. Back in the present, Woong, knowing that Woong likes Sarah, runs after him, shouting in frustration. Meanwhile, Sarah arrives home, surprised and overwhelmed by the fact that two guys had confessed their feelings for her in such a short time. A few days later, the Daehan High School volleyball team begins their competition in the President's Cup. Woong seems distant and cold towards Sarah, still upset over her rejecting his feelings. That night, during a group dinner with all the competing teams, Sarah is mocked by players from the opposing team, who call her washed up and past her prime. Meanwhile, Woong and Woong, hearing this, get angry and almost start a fight, but Sarah steps in and stops them. Afterward, Sarah advises Woong not to get into any trouble during the match and tells him not to practice alone. As he leaves, Woong asks her not to pay any attention to him, still hurt from the rejection. On the day of the match, Daehan High School's volleyball team faces the second-last team. After weeks of hard training, Sarah's team wins their first match in the President's Cup after the victory. Woong pulls Sarah in front of the player who had mocked her the night before and demands that he apologize. In front of everyone, the player finally apologizes to Sarah for his rude behavior. Later that evening, Sarah meets Woong while he's doing physical training and praises him for competing well. Woong responds by saying he will try his best to win the tournament and hand over the President's Cup to Sarah. From a distance, Subin and Woong watch Woong and Sarah being close, both feeling heartbroken. A few days later, Daehan High School's team makes it to the final round. Feeling sorry for Woong, who doesn't get support from his family, Sarah tries to call Lee to ask him to come to the match. Unfortunately, Lee refuses because he's too busy with work. That night, Woong talks to Subin and gently tells her to stop liking him. He explains that he only sees her as a little sister, which makes Subin cry sadly. One day, Woong and Woojin got into a fight after Woong found out that Woojin had also confessed his feelings for Sarah. This led Sarah to reject Woong's love, which made him upset. At that time, Woojin refused to back down, saying he knew Sarah first, while Woong argued that he now knew her better. After their argument, Woong visited Sarah, who was preparing for ankle surgery. Before leaving, he asked why Sarah had listened to Woojin, who told her to reject him. There, Sarah remained silent, unsure of how to respond. The next day, the Daehan High School volleyball team was worried because Woong hadn't returned home all night, and they were about to compete in the semifinals. Mijin informed Sarah, and after hearing about a bus accident on the news, Sarah decided to cancel her surgery to look for Woong. Thankfully, Sarah found Woong practicing with Woojin, which made her feel relieved. At that moment, Woojin seemed to have come to terms with the fact that Sarah, whom he liked and admired, had feelings for Woong instead. While Sarah was watching the Daehan High School volleyball team's match, Ki-jun called to tell her about rescheduling her surgery. He also encouraged her to win the semifinals that day. Thanks to the players' skills and teamwork, Daehan High School's volleyball team managed to win the match. That night, Sarah and Woong met again, and Sarah told him she would wait for him to express his feelings for her again when the time was right. The next day, Daehan High faced Hyeonchang High School in the final round, competing for first place. At the start of the match, Daehan's team struggled, even though Woong and the others played their best. In the middle of the match, Hyunsung suddenly collapsed in pain, causing the team and Sarah to panic. Sarah quickly asked Il-young to step in, believing that he could help the team win the match. With Il-young joining the game, Daehan High School's volleyball team regained its strength and teamwork. They gained points, and Woong and the team finally won the President's Cup for the first time. Finally, Sarah and the whole team's hard work had paid off. Soon after, Sarah and Byung-ju, who had been injured, were interviewed by many media outlets for their success in taking the team from last place to becoming champions. That night, Woong walked with Sarah, holding her hand, even though it made them the center of attention. Though Woong was a bit shy at first, Sarah encouraged him to be brave and confident in showing their relationship in public. The next day, Sarah, accompanied by Woong and Ki-jun, went to the hospital for her ankle surgery. While waiting, Woong and Ki-jun argued about who knew Sarah better. During the debate, Ki-jun realized that Woong understood Sarah more deeply than he did. After Sarah's surgery, Ki-jun visited her and revealed that he had liked her for a long time, ever since they first met. However, because of their age difference, he waited too long to express his feelings, and Sarah fell in love with someone else. There, Ki-jun admitted he had decided to let Sarah go and wished her good health. When Ki-jun saw Woong helping Sarah by pushing her wheelchair, he told Woong that he trusted him to take care of Sarah, even though Ki-jun would still keep an eye on him. Later, Sarah asked Woong not to wait for her after her surgery because she planned to go to Germany for further treatment so she could recover and return to playing volleyball. At that time, Woong refused her request, saying he would wait for her no matter what. A few days later, news about Sarah's ankle injury spread, surprising Woojin and Hansol, who had just found out about it. A few months later, Woong graduated from high school and successfully got into his dream university. 1 year later, Sarah returns from Germany and immediately visits Daehan High School to check on the volleyball team. She is surprised to find out that since Woong and Woojin graduated, the team's performance has dropped, and they are now in last place again. Meanwhile, Woong is working in an amusement park to earn extra money. There, he meets Woojin, who is now playing for a professional men's volleyball team. During their chat, Woojin invites Woong to go to a broken fountain to meet someone. Unexpectedly, Woojin introduces Woong to Sarah, who has just returned from Germany. Both of them smile happily at seeing Sarah again. She then surprises them by turning on the fountain as a playful punishment for not helping the Daehan High School volleyball team improve. Suddenly, Woojin pulls Sarah into the fountain while Mijin, who came with Sarah, tries to pull her out as the fountain sprays water everywhere. In the final scene, Sarah and all the members of the Daehan High School volleyball team are shown having fun together at the amusement park. The series ends. The moral lesson from the series is if life knocks you down, just turn on a fountain and get everyone wet because nothing fixes problems like a surprise splash and a good laugh.